So just before I start this video, I would have to, ask you to watch it until the very end because it is pretty important. Not to mention that you probably feel the same way I do. Alrighty, so just a few days ago, I mean like 2 days ago, this happened super recently, I uploaded a shark combo video on deck profile, and the very first combo was a 1-card combo with Bustar Shark, special summoning the surfacing Big Jaws from the deck, and then going into Dugaris, and then detaching 2 to revive back the Big Jaws, and, play from there. The thing is, when I activated Dugaris' effect to revive back the Big Jaws from the graveyard, there were initially no monsters in the graveyard before using the effect. And I started getting comments of people telling me that I could not do that. I was only like 99% sure that I was right and that I could do it, but the 1% of doubt started getting into my head, and I, started looking online to check whether or not you could do it. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I've been lied to since the very start, and maybe EDO Pro is just as bugged as people claim it is. Nevertheless, I pressed forward and checked online on Facebook, Reddit, etc., and I discovered something interesting. I couldn't find a single official ruling on Dugaris, and every single time people were asking, on blogs and stuff, if you could, the answer was always no, you cannot use Dugaris' effect to revive back a monster from the graveyard if you didn't have a monster in the graveyard prior. I'll come back to why this is nonsense later on the video, so stay focused. Anyways, I've even seen people compare Dugaris' effect to Cyber Dragon Nova's effect, which I think is pretty disingenuous because it doesn't tackle the problem whatsoever. The reason why Dugaris is a tricky one is because it has bullet point effects, and 2 out of the 3 ones are always legally activatable. Well, at least almost always. So if you can legally activate the effect of Dugaris for the other 2 effects and detach 2 materials, it should make sense that you should be able to use the Monster Reborn effect after detaching 2, since you now have a monster in the graveyard. I mean, the problem-solving card text of Dugaris is crystal clear. It reads that you can detach 2 materials from this card, then activate one of the following effects. So if we're trying to be consistent here, Dugaris should still be able to use its Monster Reborn effect even when you have no monsters in the graveyard before paying the cost. Since by the time you detach the materials, you now have a legal target for Dugaris to revive back. The only way this wouldn't be valid is if the card read something like, I don't know, activate one of the following effects, then detach 2 materials, then resolve the effect. Not only is this extremely stupid and illogical for multiple reasons, but there just wouldn't be any way of implementing this into the game without creating major problems. You could basically turn it into a because Konami said so rule. Just like how, Green Baboon ended up destroying the game's integrity by making it so that every card printed in the future would have to adhere to the stupid and arbitrary mechanic. I mean, come on, how can you guess that Astrograph is once per chain and you can only use one Astrograph S card per chain just by reading its effect? You can't, and that's my problem. And also, how should you guess that Dugaris cannot use its Monster Reborn effect when there is no monsters in the graveyard beforehand? Well, again, you can't, and you shouldn't, and if you do, there is probably something wrong somewhere. And this is the reason why I'm making this video. It's to let people know how awful rulings are handled in the TCG. There is no official TCG ruling database here, so there is no real way of really proving that something is right or wrong, at least over here in the TCG. The only thing that you can do is ask your head judge how a specific interaction will be ruled at a given event. And he can only help you out for that ongoing event because the ruling might actually change for the next one. I have a huge problem with that because sometimes decks are pretty much built upon interactions that only work if they have it their way. For example, if I'm playing, let's say, Beatrice Turbo with Transaction Rollback and Eradicator Epidemic Virus, if the combo only works 1 time out of 2, then that's just not okay. Anyways, back to Dugaris. The reason why I said I was 99% sure that Dugaris could use its Monster Reborn effect even with no monsters in the graveyard was because of an OCG ruling. So on December 23 of 2023, the OCG revisited one of their rulings concerning Daigusto Emeral by allowing it to use its Shuffle Back effect even if you only had 2 monsters in the graveyard prior to its activation. But only if at least one of the 2 monsters in the graveyard was a normal monster. Basically, if one of the bullet point effects of Daigusto Emeral was legally activatable, and its detaching makes it so that the other effect becomes legal as well, then you can actually go for that one instead. This makes perfect sense and is also how any normal human being would interpret Daigusto Emeral just by reading it. Why would you declare the effect and then pay the cost and then resolve the effect? That makes 0 sense. Again, though, this is only true because it has bullet point effects, otherwise this would be irrelevant. Anyways, even though this ruling is 100% set in stones in the OCG and also applies to Dugaris, the same can't necessarily be said about the TCG. Over here in TCG land, the judges are told not to rely on OCG rulings, and also pretty much disregard the OCG ruling updates, which I think is a little stupid. And again, because of the fact that there is no official TCG ruling database, there is pretty much nowhere left to go if you want to confirm whether a ruling is true or not in the TCG. You can't look at the OCG because they're different from us. You can't rely on floor judges because they have no control over how a certain ruling will work during a specific event. And also, you can't really rely on the head judges because the ruling depends on the head judge, and the head judge might actually change from one event to the other. So in other words, we have infinite problems, but no solution. Nothing can be done about this as long as the OCG and the TCG are divided ruling-wise. But I say screw that, let's just stop all this bullshit and just let's merge the OCG and the TCG together. Well, ruling-wise, not card pool-wise, because I don't want Max C back. I don't care whether we end up adopting the OCG rulings or they end up adopting ours. I'm just sick and tired of the discrepancies between them and the fact that we, the player base, have to pay for the price of their mediocrity. Again, it's one thing to have complicated rulings, but it's also another thing to have no solution for them, and just always let the head judge decide all the time. To make myself clear here, I don't really blame anyone other than Konami of TCG for the way they're handling rulings. And to be quite honest, things should have been done completely differently from the very start in order to avoid being in the current situation we're in. I've never had more empathy for players who are now trying to get into the game. I mean, the game is super complicated now, and they also don't really know where to turn for rulings. The resources at your disposal online are a good start, but not enough. And you'll be in for a rough surprise when you show up to a deck and magically it doesn't work anymore because a ruling changed the way the interaction worked. Yeah bro, my bad, but even though Buzzsaw Shark was a one card combo last YCS, it's just no longer the case for this one, but at least for next one, maybe. The only way to figure it out is by paying your flight and your hotel and then asking the judge the day of the event. No, just no. So yeah, Konami, please hear me out and fix this once and for all, because this is something the entire Yu-Gi-Oh community desperately needs. Consistency, coherence, and reliability. Thank you. Anyways, that's all I had for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know your thoughts about this entire situation in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.